Mr. Long, when DOGE releases the personal tax information of any person, should that person go to prison the same way that the person that released Donald Trump's tax returns went to prison for 5 years?
Say that again. I'm having a little trouble hearing.
When DOGE releases the personal tax information of any person, should that person that released the data go to prison like the person that released Donald Trump's tax returns went to prison for 5 years?
I'm not familiar with the specific situation. So if I'm going to follow the law wherever the law takes it, so if it's illegal, it's illegal. If it's not, it's not.
Are you aware that someone went to prison for releasing Donald Trump's tax returns and a few other people for 5 years?
Is this the little John that released everybody's?
Mr. Grassley's the one that asked the question.
Huh?
Chuck Grassley's the one that asked the question.
No, I'm asking.
There was agreement when Chuck asked it.
Isn't his name Little John? Is this the same instance you're talking about or not? That released everybody?
Hey, Patriots. Welcome back to the channel where we stand up for freedom, accountability, and the American way. Today, I want to talk about a recent Senate hearing that's got me fired up because it's about your privacy, government overreach, and yes, the political weaponization of our federal agencies. So, Senator Luján from New Mexico grilled the IRS Commissioner nominee, Mr. Long, about, get this, the illegal release of Donald Trump's tax returns and the risk to everyday Americans' privacy. Now, if you missed the clip, don't worry. I'm breaking down exactly what happened and why it matters to you, not just the political elite.
Several of my questions are yes or no's, and so just trying to help my colleagues are going to go after me be able to get their time as well, so appreciate your support there. Over 850 of my constituents have written in concerned that their private data is at risk after the Department of Government Efficiency sought access to sensitive IRS data systems. I'm also concerned that the state of New Mexico's bank records also could be inadvertently disclosed were DOGE to gain access to those systems. Mr. Long, yes or no, should the IRS Commissioner have access to the integrated data retrieval system and my constituents' private taxpayer data?
I think that we have to protect taxpayer data at all costs, so whatever that looks like, whatever that takes.
Well, historically, political officials, including the IRS Commissioner, do not have access to this data. The law was changed after Watergate. I don't have to get into that anymore. Yes or no, do you believe the Department of Government Efficiency should have access to the integrated data retrieval system and my constituents' private taxpayer data?
I don't think that anyone's taxpayer data should be released to anyone that doesn't need it for legitimate purposes.
I appreciate
of
that.
The IRS.
Yes or no, have you met with Ryan Wonderly, the DOGE employee that has been granted access to Treasury Department data systems?
Never heard the name, no, sir.
I appreciate that. If people, well, let me ask the question this way, Mr. Long. When DOGE releases the personal tax information of any person, should that person go to prison the same way that the person that released Donald Trump's tax returns went to prison for 5 years?
Say that again. I'm having a little trouble hearing.
When DOGE releases the personal tax information of any person, should that person that released the data go to prison like the person that released Donald Trump's tax returns went to prison for 5 years?
I'm not familiar with the specific situation. So if I'm going to follow the law wherever the law takes it, so if it's illegal, it's illegal. If it's not, it's not.
Are you aware that someone went to prison for releasing Donald Trump's tax returns and a few other people for 5 years?
Is this the little John that released everybody's?
Mr. Grassley's the one that asked the question.
Huh?
Chuck Grassley's the one that asked the question.
No, I'm asking.
There was agreement when Chuck asked it.
Isn't his name Little John? Is this the same instance you're talking about or not? That released everybody's and went to prison for 5 years? Is that?
Yeah, the person that went to prison for 5 years for that and for releasing Donald Trump's tax returns.
Same person?
Are you aware they went to prison for 5 years, Billy?
I'm aware that someone was sentenced to 5 years. I thought it was for a massive.
Sure, yeah.
I thought it was
for releasing tax information. So my question is, when DOGE releases tax information of my constituents or any constituents in America, should that person go to prison?
If it's illegal.
Well, it's illegal. Someone went to prison for doing it for Donald Trump. Should they do it for a constituent down the road that works on a dairy in my town?
It's either legal or illegal.
All right, well, we'll move on. I hope that's something. I'll submit it in writing so you can check with the lawyers and I'll get an answer that
Yeah,
way,
you bet.
sir.
I'll get it for you.
By the way, is the person that's going to be your chief counsel in the room today?
I'm sorry?
Is the person that's going to be your chief lawyer, your head lawyer, your top lawyer as IRS Commissioner, are they in the room today?
I don't know who's going to be the,
You said someone might be earlier when someone else
What?
asked a question. You don't know who it might be?
I don't
All right, I'll get to that later.
I don't see them. I don't think they're here, but
One of my colleagues asked a question about being able to file taxes for free directly. Yes or no, do you support the ability of Americans to file their taxes directly for free through the direct file program?
that is something we discussed at length earlier, and there's a lot of, that's one of the first things I want to look at, as I said earlier, is, bring the evidence in and let us jury it and see. There's people on both sides of that. As you know, it's one of the hottest topics in the IRS.
Let me ask the question this way. Should Americans be able to file their taxes directly for free?
They should be able to get their audits done and know where their audit is. So as far as filing, I don't, a lot of people, I think, file for free now, don't they?
Should people be able to file for free?
If they could, sure. I mean, why would, if they have to pay if they're capable of doing their own taxes, why would they have to?
Representative, I have
Pay
other
somebody to
questions.
do them.
I'll ask these a little bit later, sir. Billy, you and I come from small towns. We're simple folks. You're an auctioneer. I grew up on a small farm. People like it straight, man. People want to hear the truth. They just want to hear it straight. That's the relationship you and I have. When I was in the House with you, we didn't vote the same a lot.
But we worked on bills together, didn't we?
worked on bills
Yeah, we
together.
worked on bills together.
We always had
on-
honest
in fam-
we always had honest conversations. You always kept your word. That's all that I'm trying to get to the bottom of.
I'm the same guy I was then, and I.
That's all that I'm trying to get to the bottom of here, Representative Long. That's it. Is when we're talking about the IRS, like my colleagues kept asking questions about, are you going to make sure someone at the IRS can pick up a phone? Well, Elon Musk and DOGE say that there's going to be a 40% reduction in force. The reason no one's over there answering phones is because of Elon Musk, and President Trump let it happen. Even one of my Republican colleagues said things were better 6 months ago. Well, I don't know who the president was 6 months ago, but it wasn't Donald Trump. All I'm saying is, let's be honest with folks back at home, especially the folks that live on those small towns down a dirt road that you and I both know, sir. That's all that I'm asking. I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman.
We've always had a good
Senator Luján.
relationship, and I appreciate it.
First off, over 850 constituents wrote in worried that their private data is at risk because the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, wants access to sensitive IRS systems. Now, let's get this straight. The IRS has always been a fortress of personal financial data. After Watergate, we made sure politicians couldn't just snoop around. But now, leftist bureaucrats want to crack open the vault? Let me be clear. No government official should have access to your tax data unless it's absolutely necessary and legal. That's not partisan. That's the American principle of privacy. But the left keeps trying to blur the lines between the rule of law and their political interests. Senator Luján asked the nominee if DOGE employees should have access to this data. Mr. Long danced around, saying data should only be released for legitimate purposes. Well, who decides what's legitimate? These agencies have a history of moving the goalposts. And here's where it gets really outrageous. Luján brings up the case. Yes, the one we all remember, where someone was sentenced to 5 years in prison for illegally releasing Donald Trump's tax returns. You know what? That's the law. You release private tax information, you go to prison. That's supposed to be the standard. But here's the problem. Luján is trying to turn this into a political circus. He's basically saying, shouldn't the same rules apply to DOGE employees if they leak private info? Well, yes, Senator, but why are we even asking this? Why is there any doubt that the rules should apply equally to everyone, whether it's Donald Trump or a dairy farmer from New Mexico? This is the heart of the issue, folks. The left wants to weaponize the IRS and other agencies for political gain. They've been obsessed with Trump's finances for years, digging, leaking, prosecuting. But when it comes to protecting the privacy of everyday Americans, suddenly it's all gray area and legitimate purposes. Let's not forget, these are the same people who want to expand the IRS by 87,000 agents to snoop into your PayPal, your Venmo, your side gigs. You think they care about your privacy? You think they won't use this power against political opponents? or even regular folks who just disagree with him. Now, Luján tried to blame Republicans and President Trump for IRS phone service issues, talking about staffing cuts. Give me a break. The IRS has been broken for decades, overpaid, underperforming, and never held accountable. Throwing more money at the IRS doesn't make it work better. It just makes it bigger and more dangerous. And then there was the talk about the direct file program, letting Americans file taxes for free. You know what? I support making taxes simpler and cheaper for everyone. But the last thing we need is the government running your tax prep, collecting and calculating your taxes. That's a recipe for abuse. Senator Luján tried to cozy up to Mr. Long, talking about their small-town roots and honesty. Well, I come from a small town too, and let me tell you, we value honesty, not government spying. We work hard for what we earn, and we don't want some unelected bureaucrat rifling through our bank accounts in the name of efficiency. Listen, patriots, this hearing is a warning. The left wants to normalize government overreach and minimize the consequences when it helps their agenda. If they can send someone to prison for leaking Trump's taxes, but look the other way when it's a regular citizen, that's not justice, that's tyranny. We need to demand equal application of the law, defend our right to privacy, and push back against the ever-growing surveillance state. These agencies work for U.S., not the other way around. So, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you trust the IRS and these new government efficiency departments with your data? Or do you think it's time to rein them in, audit the auditors, and protect our freedoms? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because the mainstream media sure won't tell you the truth about what's going on in Washington. Stay strong, stay free, and God bless America.